Want to grow your own fresh vegetables at home? Like, share, and subscribe to Grow Your Own Vegetables for simple gardening tips.
Soil still snow-covered, may not be frozen. Can I dig up and send in a sample? If so, how do I dry it out? I'd like to amend sooner than later to have a good growing season. Yeah, awesome. Trying to get a kickstart, right? Yeah. So it's awesome to take whatever steps you can whenever you can, because spring is always fast, right? When the ground thaws. So a couple things. Your soil, it may not be frozen under your snow. You're totally right about that. The only way to know is to find out. What I would recommend is pushing away some of the snow. Put a digging fork in and see if you can get a digging fork in. Can you dig down 6 inches? And you don't want to dig up your whole garden space because you don't necessarily want to work your soil when it's frozen because it can be damaging to the soil. But if you can dig down in a little part just to get a sample, and you might use a little hand device, a hand trowel or a hand digging device, just to get a little tiny bit of that soil. And there is a video in the soil lesson that talks about how to get a good sample for your soil. And I talk about digging in a couple different locations so that you get an average of your area. And when your ground is frozen or semi-frozen, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want to dig up everything. You just want to be very tactical and dig in a couple places. And you want to collect 1 pound bag, which is typically about a Ziploc sandwich bag. And then if it is frozen or if it has moisture inside of it, what I would recommend doing is put it on a plate in a sunny windowsill. And the soil, when it becomes room temperature, the moisture inside is definitely going to thaw out. And what you can do is, if there's water on the plate, you definitely want to get rid of the water. But if it's just thawed out and there's no water on the plate, I would go ahead and squeeze the soil. And if excess water comes out, then make sure you drain off that excess water. The soil that you send in for your sample wants to be like a damp sponge. So like if you were to grip it in your hand, it would hold together. But if you were to touch it, it would fall back apart. So you don't want it to be too wet, and you don't want it to be overly dry. So you don't want to let it sit in the sun and completely dry out either. And then if it is, once you do that damp sponge test and it's too wet, then leave it in the sun a little longer until it passes that test. All right? So just keep in mind that if you have a garden that's a couple years old, there are a couple things that might be different about your soil test if your soil has been frozen and if it's been winter. And so a couple of things that might be a little bit different, and this is only if you've had a garden in the past. If you're just testing your soil for the very first time and this is a new garden, then this doesn't apply to you. Just send in your soil sample and don't worry too much about it. But if you have a garden that's a couple years old, your pH value in the winter, it tends to be a little bit higher than in the summer because there's less what we call soluble salts, which are essentially the nutrients, the minerals. So because all of the nutrients have been used up over the summer and now the site is a little bit more dormant, less of those nutrients are there. And then there's different soil biology that's happening underground. Don't worry about the technical words that are on the screen necessarily, but what's happening is that there's less soil biology happening in the winter, so there's less nitrification happening. That's all that means, is that less soil biology is taking place. And so what happens is, as a result, the soil pH value can tend to be a little bit high if you test it in the winter, and your phosphorus might tend to be high as well because it's related to pH. Your potassium may trend a little higher as well. And these trends are not significant enough to not do winter testing. So don't let this hold you back if you want to get your soil tested, because it does take sometimes up to 6 weeks for the lab to get your test results back. So you want to get these in as soon as you can. So don't let these trends hold you back. Just note that these things might be a little bit higher compared to the result you might get later in the season. So with the pH, just do a test when your season does warm up. Do another home pH test just to double check that it's not radically different from the test that you got done from the laboratory. All right, so that's how you do your winter testing.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And for more simple and practical gardening tips, subscribe to Grow Your Own Vegetables. For more tips and updates, visit gyov.org and join our growing community.